the News Channel 5 network. This is OpenLine.
Hello everyone, welcome to OpenLine. Very good show tonight. Just a good chance for you to call in. We want to hear your stories, your thoughts. We are talking about elder law. And this is, again, a chance for you to call in if you're caring for a loved one or you have a loved one who is aging. What are some of the problems you're facing? And we're happy to have with us Tim Takacs, elder law attorney, who can help answer maybe some of those questions. But I've just spent time trying to describe what elder law is. I want you, Tim Takacs, as we begin 2020.
2020, yes.
A whole new decade.
Yes.
And
yes.
we love having you.
Starting my 40th year of doing this, of practicing law.
Wow.
Yes, it is. And I still don't look much different from what I was, when I was a baby lawyer.
Bow tie.
I'm sure. Bow tie, yeah.
That's very good.
And I've changed bow ties since then,
good.
But still. But anyway,
so
you asked about elder law.
Elder law,
yeah.
how would, because I tried to define it, that was okay, but how would you define it?
Yeah, and we do things like, we do traditional estate planning, we do wills, powers of attorney, we do all of that, which is kind of like the nitty-gritty or the grits of estate planning. But really what we do, in addition to the estate planning part, our focus is on the living client, the living older client. And sometimes I say is that my sort of 25-second sort of speech is, we help our older clients integrate their legal, financial, and personal care needs over time. So in other words, we have people that are coming in who are 60 years old, they are 75 years old, and maybe they are somewhat healthy, and we will follow them along. I've had clients for 15 years or more, where they stay a client for years and years and years, and we kind of like, as they continue to age and as they decline, and many of them do, our job is to help guide them through the system. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's a very rewarding thing to be able to do, because it's not just here's your documents and go away. You're set up if if you die, everything is going to go to your children or your spouse or whatever. But it's really about how do we help people manage the changes that occur when they age.
And so the majority of your clients are what? They are people coming in for a parent or loved one,
a lot of times,
or are they
maybe
an
a
older
spouse
person
that
themselves?
comes in? Sometimes it's, of course, the older person that comes in. It may be, like often a representation may begin where you have a spouse that comes in, and her story is that, well, my husband is at home, he's not doing well, he's declining, I need some help in managing, his illness. He's got Alzheimer's or whatever it is. I'm not sure, when is the time to move to assisted living? Do we need to do that? How are we going to pay for that? What happens if I predecease him? What's going to happen to my husband? Can we save money for our children? How can we manage this? That's really, they're in a different world.
Right.
And they are thrust into this world without a roadmap. And they need a roadmap and they need a guide, and that's what we help our clients with, the older people with, and their families.
And so here we are at the start of the year, January. Yeah. What are some of the things that have come through your door, in like the last couple of weeks?
Okay.
Or that you might expect based on past Januaries, in the next couple of weeks?
One of the things that we see is, a lot of times is people ask, is that, well, does it slow down in January? And I say, no, it really doesn't, because what happens is that you have families that sometimes maybe they put things off until after the first of the year. Or maybe they have visited, this is like the time that they've got a chance to visit mom and dad or something else, and they're going, oh my gosh, this is not good. We need to come up with a plan. Maybe they have a family meeting or something and decide that now's the time to call the elder care lawyer. Let's get let's get an appointment in. Yeah, we've got mom and dad's they've got wills and powers of attorney, which are 25 years old, and that's when they were kids. Now we know we need to make sure that everything is since it's changed. What do we need to do to prepare for not just death, because that's the easy part. Mm-hmm. Dying is easy in this country. It's the living when you're older is hard.
Yeah.
unfortunately, but because it's getting more complicated all the time.
Now that's an interesting thing you just said, and why do you say that? Why is it hard, the living when you're older?
Right, because I was telling this to a client this morning. She came in, and we've been representing her for a while, and I actually represented her and her husband when her husband was in a nursing home, and and then he died, and then we continued to represent her. So I probably had her for 7 or 8 years, and she's doing fine. And one of the things that I try to remind people, and I kind of remind myself, is that even with all the experience that we have in our office, and is that everybody does this journey only once. It doesn't matter, all the experience that your physician has, or a care coordinator or a social worker or whatever it is, because they're helping somebody else. But everybody, if they're lucky enough to live long enough, they have to do this for themselves. And everybody has, their unique challenges for that. Okay, what is their illness? Do they have combination of illnesses? Are they living at home? Even where they're living. Okay, certain states maybe are less friendly than other states for aging. Maybe even not just the state, but we often say is all care is local. The care options, the personal care options that you have in a place like maybe Jamestown, Tennessee, are much different from what's available in Nashville. It doesn't matter. I mean, there are people with money in Jamestown, and they're going, well, I could pay for this, but there's just nothing here, nothing to buy here. I mean, you're not talking about a lot of assisted livings or nursing homes or anything like that. So their options are different, and that's why we sometimes say is all care is local.
Right.
And how to manage that, and how to get the care that you need, and how to pay for it, that's always a challenge. And you would think that, okay, I'll just pick up the phone and call somebody, and they'll come get me, and they'll make sure that it's all taken care of. Medicare doesn't pay for this. I mean, they pay for acute care. If you go to the hospital, you're good.
Right.
But if you go into assisted living or a nursing home, sure, those are those are federally and state regulated, but who's going to pay for it? So that's the kind of things that people really have to deal with.
I like what you said about how it's a journey. It's everyone does it only once.
Yes.
And it's an individual thing.
Yes.
And so that's what we want to do. We want to encourage people to call in. Maybe by telling their story, they can help other people. With what they're going through.
And trust me, I mean, that really does, because I remember you and I've talked about that for because sometimes I know we've talked about people about money and how they should hold their assets, and and I remember one woman that we were talking about how does should you put your children's names on your accounts, and I always say is that's not typically a good idea, because you really don't know what your children are doing. And I remember when we were sitting over there was an older woman that called and said, yeah, well, let me tell you what happened to me. I got a call from my bank, and they said that my account has been garnished.
Oh, brother.
And she goes, well, why was the account garnished? Well, her daughter was on the account.
Right.
And I would say your daughter isn't going to tell anybody that, that her dentist sued her.
Yeah.
So her money, and it's like, that's the dentist's money at that point.
Right.
So those are the kind of things that.
That's why it's really dangerous, and you have said over and over.
Yeah.
Because there's so many people that want to do that. They're like, well, maybe I'll get to a point where it would be good to have 2 names on the account so my son, daughter can help pay bills or whatever. But you say, hold on.
Hold on. Let's think this. Let's think about this. I often say is a lot of what we do is risk management. We know what we try to figure out what your situation is, what reasonable projections that we can make about maybe, okay, what care do you need now? What care does it look like you may need in 6 months? What care maybe what are your prospects maybe in 4 or 5 years? And so how do we prepare for that? How do we help you understand what the risks are? And how do we help you understand how to use the resources that are available to you, to make those, to make that a positive experience for you.
Would you say how many of your clients Alzheimer's is the issue? How many of your clients are dealing with someone who has Alzheimer's? Is in that
I would
stage?
say probably of the ones that that we're really active, we're actively really doing long-term care planning for, where they come in and they actually have a chronic illness of some sort, I would say probably a good 40 to 50%.
Wow, really?
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty common thing.
Yes, yes, it is.
And for Alzheimer's, what is, I guess, the biggest mistake people make, or what's the best piece of advice you would give people, just generally, obviously come and talk one-on-one, but generally speaking, maybe a big mistake people make, a good piece of advice you'd give them?
Well, for one is if you have a diagnosis of some sort of chronic illness, you need to come up with some sort of plan. You don't, and the plan has to be more than just, well, I'll know what I need to do when this gets worse, or well, I've got my wills and powers of attorney in place. I mean, that's sort of like those are necessary, but they're not sufficient. I mean, they cover what happens to you typically when you die, or if you lose the capacity to make a decision for yourself, then you have a power of attorney that allows you to do that. But that doesn't, I mean, it happens, of course it does, obviously it does happen, but capacity, being able to make a decision for yourself is not something that you turn on and turn off. Decline in capacity is incremental. That's why I say is that we do get calls for people in January, and they're saying as well, when we saw Mom last year at this time, she was a lot better. Well, Mom doesn't know that because she's living it day to day.
Right.
But it's the times that when the children come in and they're saying, well, Mom wasn't nearly as bad last year. Now we need to do something. Mostly it's like, don't wait.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just people coming into us and having a conversation and say, are there things that we should be doing now?
And there are things people should be doing.
Right.
That can make a big difference.
Right. And sometimes another thing that I often say too is oftentimes people live at home longer, than they really should. In other words, everybody walks in and says, well, I'm going to live at home for as long as I can. And I'll say, well, that's a good idea, and I think everybody should do that. What's your marker?
Right.
What's going to tell you, that you can't do that anymore? Well, I think I'll know it when I know it. Well, maybe yes, maybe no. The problem is that as we age, as many of us as we age and we decline, that skill for determining when do we need to do something different goes away. And so the mental acuity that we need to determine, okay, maybe now's the time to go, that's precisely what's gone, and that's what we had depended upon to help us make that decision.
What's a good idea for a marker? What would be a good marker? Do you have recommendations on that? I mean, that's a fascinating question. I think I would answer it the same way. Well, I'll just know.
Yeah, you'll know.
I want to stay in my house as long as I can. I think I would say that. And then if you ask, well, when I'll just know. But what's a marker?
Well, one is that certainly sometimes you have to, for one is if you start realizing that you're relying on others, for basic tasks. Obviously, things like bathing or dressing or something like that. Those are kind of the obvious ones. But what we really are looking at are what are called like the instrumental activities of daily living. That is like bill paying, financial management, getting out, driving, transportation, getting yourself to the doctor. If things like that, if it becomes more and more difficult, then that's the kind of thing where maybe I need to reconsider relying on people more. I mean, that's the big thing is, you have, older people will say, well, my daughter will take care of me.
Right.
Okay. Well, that's good. Well, what do you think, daughter? They'll just sort of grit at you and go, it's not involuntary servitude. I'll do what I can for my mom.
Right.
But in some ways there's reciprocity required. Okay, Mom, I'll do this for you, but what are you going to do for me? And we're not just talking, money. And although money is an option, okay, maybe I'll pay my daughter to do this. Well, that's a daughter's duty. Maybe some people say, well, maybe not. What your daughter is doing, it typically costs $25 an hour if you went out and shopped it.
Wow. Yeah.
for the basic tasks like that you're asking your daughter to do, and what is she giving up, and what are you giving up?
So these are the things we have to think about.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, that kind of sets the table.
Yeah.
And it's a fascinating topic, and there's so many people focused on it. That's why we like to do this show. We encourage you to call in. There's the number, 615-737-PLUS. 615-737-7587. Call in with a question or a comment or your own story or whatever. We'll take a break. Be back right after this.